Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We're going to give people a couple more minutes to join. There are a lot of you on the line, so you all will be muted throughout the event. Sorry with my weird camera. However, we want you to engage. So use the question section on your toolbox throughout the meeting. And so put your questions in there, and we'll hopefully get to all of them in the second portion of our Q&A section of the event. So our panelists will respond to them. But again, we're going to give you all a few more minutes to join. But yeah, check out that question toolbox, put in your questions. If we don't get to them all today, we'll follow up via email. So we'll wait a couple more minutes. And then the panelists, you can hide your screens for now if you'd like, your cameras. And then once we open the Q&A section, I'll ask you to hear those again. Okay. So again, everyone will get started in just a moment. So remember that you'll be muted throughout the event. However, we encourage you to send us questions via the question box. Also, feel free to chat with one another in the chat feature. Hopefully, we'll get to most of those questions in the second portion of our event during the Q&A panel. Wait, got one more minute, just a couple more of you all to join. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Wolf, and I am with Metropolitan Energy Center. Thank you for joining us today for our virtual roundtable, Best Practices and Lessons Learned from Deployments in the Kansas City region and beyond. So real quickly, I want to just give an overview, a quick agenda. So this event is an hour and a half, but I promise it will go by quickly. So first, I'm going to give an overview of MEC and our Clean Cities coalitions. Then I'm going to hand it over to our Executive Director, Kelly Gilbert, who's going to talk to you about some funding opportunities. I'm going to give a quick overview of our projects, and then we're going to open up to the Q&A with the panelists, which I'm sure why most of you joined, the interesting stuff, and then we will close. So as I mentioned, I'm with Metropolitan Energy Center, and since 1983, we've worked with thousands of residents, municipalities, and individuals and businesses to transform energy use in the transportation and building sectors. So we started out in 1983 actually in a department with the city of KC-Mo, working with residents to improve the energy efficiency of their buildings. And we've expanded that program through our Energy Solutions Hub. So we've expanded it to the metro area, and we recently relaunched it, and it's really going to focus on providing those training, resources, outreach to help residents as well as commercial building owners, save on energy bills, make their environments more comfortable and also more healthy. So if you have any questions on that, please reach out. But obviously what most of you are likely here today is for transportation. So the cornerstone of our transportation programs is our Clean Cities Partnership, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. So Clean Cities Coalition the program was created in 1993, and it's offered through the Department of Energy. And so there are 80 plus coalitions nationwide, and MEC has the honor of housing the Kansas City Regional and Central Kansas Clean Cities Coalitions. So through our coalitions, the Kansas City Regional Coalition was formed in 1996. So since then, we've worked again with thousands of residents, businesses, municipalities to promote clean fuels, new fuel technology, and alternative fuels of all types. So if you visit our website, there's the link. You can learn more about our various programs. There's a lot going on, so definitely don't hesitate to reach out to me or the individual listed on that page. But one of the resources Clean Cities Coalitions connect people to is funding. And so there's a lot of funding opportunities going on, and it can obviously be overwhelming, confusing, a lot to navigate. So in that time, don't hesitate to reach out to MEC or your Clean Cities coordinator. But I'm going to hand it over to Kelly Gilbert, our Executive Director. She's going to go a little more in depth about a couple of those funding opportunities in the transportation sector. So we'll hand it over to you, Kelly.
Thank you, Emily. So we have kind of access to a lot of different types of funding opportunities. Emily mentioned our website, our Clean Cities. This Clean Cities section of our website has information on rebates and incentives, in addition to occasionally posted opportunities related to grant funds. And so MEC has a kind of a long history of managing grants for fleets and municipal agencies, and sometimes doing planning efforts related to trainings, for instance, or first responder education, and electric vehicle planning and readiness. So we've kind of run the gamut, but obviously our most popular programs are for deployments. And so I'm going to focus a little bit on some of the perennial funding opportunities that come around usually annually, and a little bit about what's happening with the Volkswagen settlement opportunities in the states of Kansas and Missouri. For those of you who don't know, I used to be a Clean Cities coordinator for a long time. I recently kind of gave that up, and our Clean Cities coordinators are variously busy today, so I'm pinch hitting for them. So first up, I want to talk about the Diesel Emission Reduction Act. This is managed by the EPA. It offers several different ways to engage. They do direct rebates for school buses, and that opportunity is actually open nationwide right now. They provide funding directly to states, and the states are tasked with managing those funds in allowable ways, and those are typically released in the springtime by the states. I don't believe there's an open opportunity with the states for the DARA at this time. And the big grants, the competitive grants, are open typically again in the spring. We usually hear from EPA that they're open around the January-February timeframe, and they usually close between April and June, depending on how quickly the federal government is moving its appropriations process. So we have actually led 5 DARA grants since 2015, and we're launching a 6th one here in the next couple of months. We should be able to add new electrification projects through requests for applications. Expect that, I think, in late winter, once we have an opportunity to get our fleets online for that. So with the Diesel Emission Reduction Act opportunities, eligible vehicles are class 5 to 8 on-road diesel trucks. Also eligibility for marine engines, we don't have a lot of that here. Yard trucks, like the ones we're going to hear more about today, locomotives, and construction and other off-road equipment are eligible, as well as generators and pumps. For technologies, again, typically we work with vehicle replacement. You can also do engine replacement and repowers. Marine, shore, and parking electrification are also eligible, and there are some other eligibility categories that are sometimes tied to doing something else with your vehicles. Eligible fuels are you can upgrade to a new diesel. You can upgrade to propane, LNG, compressed natural gas, biofuels, and electricity. We typically manage projects strictly for alternative fuels. We generally don't allow diesel retrofits under our programs. Eligible project years are model years vary under the programs. And next slide, Emily. I've probably spent a little bit too much time on DARA. It's just we're kind of in the weeds on that one. The Department of Energy Vehicle Technologies Office has, an annual funding opportunity. The scheduling, again, varies on this depending on the funding appropriations, as well as the administrative priorities and that kind of thing. But they do get published, generally speaking, between February and June. If we're working on something, we will generally also try to get out, just like we would with DARA program, a request for applications so that we can competitively bring in projects from our service territory. Service territory for us includes Kansas and Missouri. So if you're if you're operating in the states of Kansas and Missouri and you hear about a funding opportunity from us, inquire if we're accepting applications and going out for an overall application. It's important to note that if we're the funding is different. The funding availability is different between the EPA program and the Department of Energy programs. EPA generally can cover 25% of the entire truck replacement, for instance, or bus replacement, whereas Department of Energy typically only allows reimbursement of the incremental cost of an alternative fuel over a diesel or gasoline. Department of Energy does also offer opportunities for gasoline conversions and also fueling stations, which is different from DARA. So keep your eye out. Honestly, the best way to stay informed about the funding opportunities that are coming out nationally and the ones that we're applying for on behalf of members is to just join our newsletter. You can find it at metroenergy.org. The drop down for Get Involved has a newsletter join link, so please do that. And then finally, the Volkswagen settlement funding. The states of Missouri and Kansas both received their Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust funding years ago. Missouri has almost allocated out their entire funding round, but you can find more about that program at that link. They just closed a funding opportunity in this month, and so I guess we'll see after that whether there's any funding left over for them to spend. Kansas has taken a different route. They have just recently started offering funding opportunities. They just, again, had an opportunity close last month. You can keep up to actually join their mailing list is probably the best way to keep up with the KDHE opportunities. At that link there, KDHE, the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, has handed off the electric vehicle corridor funds to KDOT. And so that's a different mailing list. But if you're interested in receiving information about that opportunity as it comes out, just get in touch with Emily and we'll route you to the right Clean Cities coordinator for that. And that's all I was going to say about that.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
And we will also, after this event, send out the slide decks and several of the resources mentioned. So don't worry if you missed a link or something. We'll definitely make sure we get that to you. And as Kelly said, reach out to one of us. We'll get you pointed in the right direction. So our last section before we get to the Q&A, I wanted to give a brief overview of our project, Electrifying Terminal Trucks in Uncentivized Markets. So as Kelly mentioned, at MEC, we manage several grants, and this one is through the Department of Energy and is why we are able to hold this event today. So this is a 3-year project with 3 kind of main goals. So the first goal is to demonstrate the feasibility of electric yard trucks through local deployments. And so we will hear from our project fleets in the Q&A section of this event. There's also a demo truck available through the project, which I will talk more about in a few slides. The second goal is to promote electrification in other fleets by hosting this community workshop and other outreach efforts. And one thing I want to note is that during our outreach, not only do we want to share valuable information, but learn from you all, because we need to better understand what are your concerns, challenges, and perceptions regarding fleet electrification. So, as Clean Cities coordinators, the Department of Energy, we can better address those needs and make sure you all are getting the resources you need to adopt alternative, cleaner fuels. And our third goal, which will happen in year 3 of the project, so next year, is to develop a model program for zero-emission freight handling. And so we will do this by leveraging data and the unique experiences of our project fleets, which are on here today, as well as our demo users. And so really quickly, I wanted to highlight some of our project accomplishments and progress year to date. So as I mentioned, this is a 3-year program and we are in year 2 of the project. So our first kind of main goal, which was the first year of the project, which was last year, we deployed 4 Orange EV T-Series pure electric terminal trucks in the Kansas City and Chicago metro areas. It was pretty exciting because prior to 2020, Orange EV had yet to deploy one of their trucks locally, and that's really important because they actually are headquartered in the Kansas City metro area in Riverside, Mo. So we were really excited to see that happen. There were two trucks deployed here in Kansas City, and then as well as 2 in Chicago. And one of those trucks deployed in Chicago was Orange EV's all-new Tandem Axle truck. So that was really exciting, and kind of, it's a unique experience through the project. Laser Spot is able to share their best practices and experiences with that tandem trucks. That's there on the right, and the other 2 trucks we deployed through the project are there as well. And again, we will hear from these fleets as well as Orange EV and some of our other project partners in the Q&A. So as I mentioned, available through the project is a demo vehicle. So interested fleets across the US, but trying to keep this specific demo truck in the Midwest, can use the truck, and they're the same exact one the fleets have, and their unique work experience at no cost except a possible shipping fee up to $500. So that kind of depends where you're at. And so to date, the demo truck has been to 18 locations across the US, and really the only requirement to use the demo truck is to complete a questionnaire. And so we're taking the demo users' questionnaires and going to put that in our data analysis of the project. And demo users also have the opportunity, if they want to join one of our project monthly meetings or meet with one of our project fleets. I know one of the demo users really did this summer. Those opportunities are there. So really want to connect you to those resources. And I just realized the link is not on here, but I'll put it in the chat in our follow-up, the link to our project page, where you can put in a request to use that demo vehicle. So definitely check it out. So really, yeah. And if you do, please complete the questionnaire. Some fleets forget that. And so our third project accomplishments in progress is, so through this community workshop, the roundtables we're holding with our project fleets, data collection, and the demo user questionnaires, we hope to address and better understand, again, your all's concerns and challenges regarding terminal fleet electrification, help the freight marketplace understand the impact and benefits of terminal fleet electrification, and then ensure successful collaboration. So with us at MEC, our project fleets, MEC, our other project partners, and as well as the demo users. And so again, this is just really initial findings, nothing super scientific, but some things we've found through our projects. So we hold quarterly roundtables with our project fleets, and one of them we focused on cold weather, which we'll talk a little about in our Q&A session. But that was really nice to kind of hear how the trucks were operating, and as well as best practices. Also on a quarterly basis, we ask our project fleets to complete a quick survey on different topics. So again, really the goal is to better understand fleets' concerns and challenges regarding deploying these vehicles. And then again, the demo users, kind of just nice and fun to see what surprised them. It's, one thing that we saw a lot that seemed to be surprised by several of our demo users was the truck's torque and ease of operation. So again, this is nothing scientific, just some initial things we found. In year 3, we're really going to start that data analysis, and we'll hear from our project partner who's helping with that in the Q&A. Let's see here. And so before we get into the Q&A panel, you may have noticed when you registered for this webinar, there was a survey question, which, what is your biggest concern regarding fleet electrification? No surprise, the biggest concern among you all was cost, and then it was followed closely by infrastructure requirements, range anxiety, and then a lot of concerns, some concerns regarding battery durability. And in the other section, some concerns listed were client adoption, having that available support to deploy this vehicle. Does it have enough power to get the job done, which we also will discuss in our Q&A session. And then also one concern too that I unfortunately don't know if we'll address as much, but that a lot of times we see these vehicles, obviously they have a huge benefit on the local community as well as the workers, making sure they are deployed in environmental justice communities. Too often we see they're deployed in a community where it's great, it's improving the air, but maybe it's not a community who has a worse air quality. So we're definitely looking at ways to diversify our funding at MEC, and I know the Department of Energy is. And so one thing to keep in mind, if you as an individual, a business or municipality, don't hesitate to reach out to us, even if you're not sure if you could maybe meet the cost share requirements of the project. Always do not hesitate to reach out, because we can work with you and your community to hopefully, figure something out. So definitely don't hesitate. But I just wanted to share that to kind of give a precursor of kind of what we're seeing. And this was really helpful. So thank you for completing it, because it's going to really help guide our Q&A session with our panel, which we're going to now. So this is more the interesting part. So we're going to spend about 45 minutes answering questions that we came up with. Again, your responses to the registration survey were extremely helpful in developing those. And then at the end, we'll open it up to the audience so we can answer some of your questions. So as Kelly said, and please put those in the question box. And if we don't get to them all, we will certainly follow up with them post-event. But right now, I'm going to ask my panelists, if you don't mind, hopping on and sharing your screen, or sorry, your video. And we're going to have you just go down the line and give a brief introduction. And then Kelly Gilbert, our executive director, who graciously agreed to facilitate the panel discussion. So if everyone, all your panelists if you're able to share your cameras, we can go down the line and just get started with you all just giving a little brief introduction about yourselves. So, Chris, do you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. I'm Chris Butler. I'm Director of Fleet Services with Johnson County, Kansas. We have a mid-size, what I consider a mid-size fleet, governmental fleet here in the Kansas City area. And we're very excited to be diving into alternative fuels. And this certainly is a component and a piece of that puzzle for us.
Thank you. Darren, do you want to give an intro?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, now we can.
Okay, good. Hi, I'm Darren Darr. I'm the site manager here for Hirschbach on the spotting division at the Lineage facility in Edwardsville, Kansas. And we currently have one electric truck on site.
Thank you. All right, and David, I'll hand it over to you. And then James, you're up.
Yep, hey everyone, David Stringer, VP of Innovation at LaserSpot. We're the #1 provider of spotting services in North America. In my previous life, I was owner of STS Transportation until I joined LaserSpot's team last year, and just been in charge of their EV efforts. And so our goal is to try to really try to push the industry in the right level. We recognize our scale and try to be good stewards to the industry in that manner. As well as our customers and their needs, and service our communities and making them cleaner and healthier. And so with EV, the way it's developed the last 5 years or so, it's become something that's a little bit more approachable for customers, a little bit more sellable for us. So I'm happy to be on this. Still learning with the help of James, who you'll hear from in a little bit, but more importantly, glad to be part of the process. So thanks.
Great, thanks, David. Hi, my name is James Nelson. I'm the Associate Director of Innovation and Sustainability for Compass Supply Chain Solutions. I was previously the Director of Operations for Firefly Transportation and EV Yard Spotting Services Company. Firefly was acquired by LaserSpot in April of this year. So now through Compass, I'm assisting LaserSpot and David's team with their EV fleet expansion while using the knowledge and experience that we obtained from running Firefly. That includes everything from grant applications, site assessments, right sizing equipment, all that good stuff that Emily had touched on. As part of this particular project, we deployed Orange EV's first tandem electric yard spotting unit that's now run by LaserSpot. Thanks for having me on the panel today, and I look forward to the conversation.
Hi, I'm Jason Nake. I'm Vice President of Legal and Regulatory Affairs for Orange EV. We are the manufacturer of the terminal tractors people are talking about here. We built our first terminal tractor, or started the company in 2012, sold our first electric terminal tractor in 2015, And we, for about 4 years, we were the only company in the country that had sold an all-electric Class 8 vehicle. And happy to be a part of this process and help everybody out to convert their fleets to zero emission.
Good afternoon. This is Julie Dietrich, and I'm with Evergy. Evergy is the utility provider for the Kansas City, Topeka, and Wichita metro areas. I work on the electrification team. I've also got Drew here today. We'll be representing Evergy as a whole, but my focus area is actually to support on-road fleets. So if you do have on-road fleets, I would be your main point of contact for those type of questions.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Drew Torkelson. I'm also with Evergy in the electrification department. My focus area is on off-road electric vehicles, building electrification, commercial and industrial customers, and EV charging support. So I'd be glad to be in contact with any of you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is XB Hu. I'm an assistant professor at Pennsylvania State University. Prior to this, I was at Missouri S&T. So we are the research partner of this project. I'll be glad to share the perspective from the academia, from the university side. Thank you.
Thanks, XB. Well, I will hand it over to you, Kelly, if you want to get started with our Q&A. And as a reminder, everyone, if you just want to have any questions, throw them in the chat, and hopefully we'll get to them throughout the webinar.
All right, great. Thank you, Emily. I am excited to get into the discussion with this dynamic panel with representatives from fleets, manufacturer, utility, and researchers. We don't often kind of have everybody in the same location, so it's nice to have this full group for this conversation today. I want to thank you each for your time and expertise during this Lunch and Learn, and I'm expecting to learn a lot as well as the rest of the audience. I will say I'll often direct questions to specific panelists, but if the topic applies to you, please feel free to jump in with a follow-up comment. We're glad to hear from more than one of you for each question. And Emily just gave the audience a reminder about the question tab, and we will move right on. All right, our first question is for the fleets. So give us a big picture on what your experience is within your company or agency regarding electric trucks or other alternative fuels. Like, where are you with that, and what's your future plans?
I can go ahead and kick off. In terms of Johnson County, we've had a pretty long history of alternative fuel vehicles, starting with hybrid systems in small vehicles back in the 80s, gas electric hybrid systems, again, in SUVs, vehicles, cars, and trucks. We've moved more extensively into compressed natural gas through the last decade or so, made significant infrastructure in CNG, fueling stations, partnerships that we have going on with other governmental agencies, school district, and now we're starting to move into electrification. We have not gone really fast into electrification. Just started with a handful of light duty vehicles and then kind of jumped into this opportunity. We really look forward to the opportunity to electrify our fleet more, as well as diversify our alternative fuel fleet, I guess, overall as a whole. So that's kind of where we're at in Johnson County right now.
Yeah, I mean, for Laser Spot, we originally started with I would say an aggressive idle reduction policy. And, what our goal was is to try to beat the industry average by about 30%. And so as we got to that, we experienced some of the savings that come with idle reduction, but we really wanted something more aggressive. At the time, I can tell you, I owned a fleet. We had tried the hybrid technology. It was not ready for prime time, and it was really full of flaws and full of maintenance issues. So fast forward to around 2015, we really started to get, as far as Laser Spot goes, we really started to get serious about our idle reduction efforts. And so We ended up purchasing our first EVs in actually 2017. We've been running those 7 or 8 trucks since then. We still have those same trucks. No issues whatsoever. No issues whatsoever. No issues with the capacity, and that's in a variety of use cases. That's in 24/7 environments, lighter use case environments, East Coast, West Coast, cold places. We've been nothing but pleased with our investment in EV so far. And so this year, we actually made a concerted effort to really try to push the industry. And so our goal, by the end of next year is actually to try to be #1 in this space with electric vehicles. And so that's trying to be out ahead of FedEx and UPS and all that. And so that's where our investment in Firefly comes in. We really want to jumpstart our effort, really wanted to jumpstart, our place in line as far as the manufacturing, where we are in the manufacturing process, so that we can get around some of the bottlenecks, because that was a lot of constraints as customers were asking about it more and more. And we couldn't meet the need because there simply wasn't enough capacity. So that's where we're at now. Our goal is to try to be, again, #1 by the end of next year. We're going to try to be above 30 by the end of this year, hopefully. And so, the sooner customers adopt and we can educate them through forums such as these and other outlets, the better off we'll be. But so far, it's been great for us.
And I'll add to that too. Now that LaserSpot has multiple trucks in different parts of the country, you got the cold winters of upstate Michigan and Chicago to the warm summers of California. So the trucks performed outstanding out in these climates and areas, and we were really able to collect data from Firefly as well as LaserSpot through the telematics system through Orange EV to demonstrate even more the benefits of the EV solution.
Terrific. And Darren, you're up.
Yeah, sure. For Hirschbach, we got our first truck here this past January, and we actually use I believe the enhanced offboard charging system. So that allows us to do some opportunity charging throughout the day and then do like a full charge. I know going forward for Hirschbach, we are going to get into more electric trucks, and we have 2 slated for, it looks like, in Olathe, and then many more throughout the country. I think we're going to go into the phase of probably the fast charging cabinets. Seems like it fits our business a little better. But the opportunity charging that we're doing now is working great here at the lineage facility, and we just look forward to continue, adding more trucks to the fleet.
Great. We're going to ask you a little bit more, I think, in detail. Maybe I was going to suggest that maybe Evergy could step in there as well, but I think you must have worked with BPU to install your system there in KCK. Next question that is really a kind of a follow-up, and if you guys have anything that you want to share that's kind of surprised you or your drivers about operating the electric yard truck in comparison with a diesel, what's been Firefly or Laser? You guys have 5 years of experience here, so you may have to dig deep for this one. But what was something that surprised you?
So really, it was really quality of life change for the drivers. So many times, as the other guys on the panel could attest to, you get a call over the CB, or God forbid you're on a phone trying operating a Class 8 vehicle. You can't hear half the time. It adds a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and you're hot by the end of the day. And so the EVs right away, the guys were essentially trying to battle for who got into the trucks, which is rare. And so it really just improved the quality of life. The guys could hear it. They could hear it the first time. It's quiet when they're done with their shift. Again, it's 12-hour shifts for the most part, so they're still tired, but they didn't feel the fatigue and all that on the day-to-day. And so I would say that's been the biggest surprise. I mean, we knew it had a lot of economical benefits, but I think I would say the human cost. To put in perspective, I actually had to, when I owned the company, had to get rid of had to let a mechanic go because his asthma was exacerbated by the amount of smoke and particulates in the air. And so if we had EVs, you wouldn't have had that issue. So it's not only drivers that are being affected by this, it's maintenance technicians as well. So.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well. The driver component is interesting. You always get a reaction and preconceived notions that EV is not able to handle the same weights and duty cycles, but quickly disproven. Truck's very quiet. And I did want to mention too, site profile is critical in selecting the charging equipment. So that surprises a lot of people, but site profile is key to determine the battery sizing, charger sizing, all that good stuff.
What about you guys at Hirschbach?
Well, I was just gonna kind of include that. I mean, it's a quiet truck. It does, the drivers like it because it is quiet. They can hear, it doesn't get hot from the engine, you know, being underneath you in a yard truck. You know, one of the things we found is actually the comfort of the truck itself with the way Orange EV builds them with AC and heat that actually works in these type of trucks. So the comfort level went up a lot too for us.
And I'll say from our standpoint, we haven't got a whole lot of as much seat time in the vehicle as some of our other panelists have. But one of the things that we've noted, and maybe this will be kind of just because we're green in this, is the simplicity of the operation of the vehicles. Yeah, a lot of people think it's going to be an electric vehicle, and they're worried they're going to have tons of transition and learning, and the learning curve is going to be very high. But the learning curve really wasn't that dramatic between this and the traditional diesel. In fact, in a lot of aspects, it's much simpler for them to operate. So that's one of the things that we've noticed, along with the other obvious things that the guys have said, or the panelists have said, with the comfort, the sound, the noise levels. It's all been outstanding.
Terrific. Chris, since you have the floor, Johnson County's project is unique in that you're not using the truck for typical goods movement operations like the other fleets are. Can you tell us what kind of encouraged you to apply for this project and how your truck is being used?
Sure, and I'll give a little bit of background. We are utilizing the vehicle. We had a brand new wastewater treatment facility that it is and was being built. It's being completed right now. It's in operation, which is exciting. We are utilizing the vehicle to move solids from those wastewater locations to other areas. So we're going to be utilizing it more in a quantitative, a number of times a day for short distances and short periods between those trips. We were very excited for the opportunity to look for alternative fuel options for the plant as a whole, which included electric vehicles, light duty electric vehicles, some of the things just to kind of take the traditional fuel vehicles out of the equation, and this fit perfectly. We had a need for it. The timing was perfect. As we were reaching out to Orange EV, we learned about this opportunity. So all of the pieces really fell into place for us, and we were very excited to be included as part of the project. So that's a little bit of our history with it.
Great, thank you. Now I want to bring Drew and Julie from Evergy into this conversation. Can you walk us through the kind of planning and electrical upgrades that are required to implement a charging infrastructure project for off-road and on-road as well, Julie? And one of the audience questions is kind of specific. Like for instance, if an average fleet size is under 3 units, is the cost really that cost prohibitive? Or is it simply just running a 240 or 480 volt outlet to a wall panel, for instance? So you could address that as well.
You asked for Julie, or did either one of us?
Either one of you.
All right, I'll take the planning. The planning electrical upgrades, there's quite a few considerations that need to be identified early in the process. Really, on planning, you want to consider your current and your future needs. Things like people have talked about earlier, number of chargers, where the charger is located, your charging schedule, the type of vehicles you're going to be hooked to it, operating hours a day, battery size, your future, your 5-year outlook, etc. So if you need help walking through those considerations, you can call either Julie Dietrich or me, and we can help guide you through that process. I think our contact information is on the bottom of the deck here. So, but depending on the project, it may make sense to separately meter the chargers. We can help with those considerations too. As far as electrical upgrades, once you know those logistical items that we just talked about, you can determine if the existing electrical service is sufficient for your plans. Often the existing service is sufficient. If not, an application for additional load is submitted. We can help answer those questions so you have the information needed for that application. Once you do an application, one of our Evergy personnel will design modifications to get you the capacity you needed. And once those designs are complete, the work can be scheduled. The question about as simple as hooking to a run that question by me again, Kelly. I'm sorry, I lost it.
Sure. If you're an average fleet size of under 3 units, is the cost really prohibitive, or is it just, or can you just run a 240 or 480 volt line to a wall panel?
If you're just a smaller fleet, quite often your existing service and your existing distribution panel are probably going to help you, would be sufficient to handle what you're adding. And you really just have to have a conversation with us and we walk through those questions. I don't want to make a blanket statement there. Julie, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, you did great. You touched on you may want to separately meter. One consideration for separately metering is that you might be able to take advantage of a time of use rate. So if you are planning on charging service or charging your vehicles overnight when they're parked, a time of use rate might be attractive for your business case. So it's really good to contact Evergy in your planning process when you are evaluating fuel costs, when you're evaluating your short-term to long-term plans, and we can connect you to rates as well as potential rebates for the charging equipment in that planning process. If we wait until construction starts, what we're able to advise or guidance we're able to provide will be a little bit more limited, because you're trying to get your service, run quickly so that you can have the charging equipment in place when you have your vehicles delivered. But if you contact us early on, when you're procuring money and funding and building out your business plan, we can partner together and kind of tackle your unique needs and make sure that we put the right information in front of you during that time.
I'm just going to echo that a little bit because I mentioned earlier that we operate funding opportunities and so forth. I think that fleets sometimes underestimate or overestimate, depending on the site, how much they need to spend on infrastructure upgrades for their charging. So that's really planning.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie.
I'll echo that too. When our experience with Firefly, a lot of times we would need to have an accurate site profile 100% to ensure that the equipment is sized properly for the service too. So having those conversations early on with the customer and making sure you're not overbuilding your infrastructure, because you don't want to oversize things, bringing in additional cost. Just need to right size the equipment is key.
All right, thank you. Darren, I told you we'd come back to you on that other question. Was there a follow-up comment?
No, I just wanted to add to that. I agree with James. We really haven't seen that the infrastructure has been the constraint at any of the sites that we've gone into, and we've put as little as 1 truck in a site, upwards of, and we've priced as high as 3, 4, 5 trucks, and the infrastructure has never been the real constraint. I would say we haven't really seen, I would say the costs that we've seen have been between 5, and we haven't seen anything higher than 15,000 to draw a line out to the charging cabinet. So.
This is Jason Dake. I would chime in and just, I know we're kind of talking about a Missouri, Kansas type operation here. from our perspective, we have seen infrastructure come in to be a gating factor, but it's been in California and states like that where say it's an intermodal, and they come in and want to put in like 20 plus trucks in one fell swoop. And when you see adoption rates that go up like that, you will hit infrastructure log jams. And I'm sure Evergy they probably got the data on the number of trucks. When you start getting up in those double-digit number trucks, you do need to engage the utility company early if you're going to do that.
I will say too, I feel like I need to echo that a little bit as well, Jason. The Kansas City, we did a study back in 2013. I know things keep changing as far as electrical service and the grid and distribution and so forth. But we did a study back in 2013-14 on electrical readiness for grid readiness for electrification in the Kansas City Metro. And we're in a really good position, with the exception of a couple of locations that may have over subscribed kind of capacity, right? But locations like New York City, depending, I don't know how many people we have on the call from out of town, but locations like New York City it can be difficult for them to find additional electrical service. So it does really depend, especially when you're looking outside of the Kansas and Missouri areas. Really need to get your utilities involved as early as possible. So good point. Thank you. So Darren, I wanted to get back with the way that you are particularly operating and charging your trucks at the Kansas City site. I have in my notes that your truck operates about 16 hours a day. Obviously, there's not a huge block of charging available in your duty cycle. So how is that? You mentioned that you're opportunity charging. Is there anything else that you would say about that? Any details that you want to add to that description? Did you have to do any preparations? How are the truck operating? Just kind of give us more on that.
Sure. Well, so the truck, the facility actually runs 24 hours a day. But with the battery that we're using in the setup with the enhanced and stuff, it has to actually charge. You've got to stop and you've got to charge. So that 4 hours is the time for whatever, let's say it's 40% or whatever the number is throughout the day. That gives it enough time to get to 100%. And then the next shift comes on, and after they come on, we usually do, I think typically 15-minute intervals, about, let's see here, 8 times a day. So that gives us probably about 12% on that opportunity charging. And it just comes to a point with this yard being so busy and all the tasks that the truck does, that we do have to sit it down for a little bit and actually get it to recharge. You know, it takes time to charge it. So
that being why you're interested in fast charging for future installations.
Absolutely. The technology's there. It's, you know, a 2-hour, you know, if it's 0 and I put a charger on it, it'll be done in 2 hours. So the way I'm doing it now, within 15 minutes, we're getting a lot more, I guess, charging percentage than we do currently. And that's why we're going to that, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would agree. We've only when we've done our bids or our customer presentations, we've only put in the fast chargers, and it's because of that reason. You have to be a little bit too on the ball and be a little bit too savvy with the charging and your opportunity charging. The fast charger kind of puts that to bed, especially if you can't place the chargers near where the driver's going to be stopped most often. So, yeah.
So opportunity charging works great for if you're not running 24 hours a day.
No, it still works 24/7. So we always tell the customers, put the charger where the guys are going to be stopped the most. That's by a break room, you know, where they park their cars, by the guardrails. Even in 24/7, we always take advantage of opportunity charging. Yep, and we generally don't have a truck to go below 50% capacity 24/7, whether it's 12 hours, 24 hours, doesn't matter.
Yeah, and
Excellent.
the duty cycle should match the charge time. And so that you have enough time to charge the truck fully over a specified period based on the site profile.
Terrific. I was going to give Jason the opportunity to jump in here, but he dropped off video just as I was going to go to him. So we'll let him come back.
Sorry, I'm back now. I had to jump in here and put something in front of me, and I didn't want to have it on camera.
Did you want to jump in on the opportunity charging versus fast charging conversation?
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing that we basically really push in with all of our customers. And the basic premise, simply put, is not only does it keep the vehicle topped off, for lack of a better term, is, you know, we currently, our new batteries have a 7.5-year battery life. The older batteries we had a 3-year battery battery warranty. The older batteries had a 3-year battery warranty. And so as the technology advances, it becomes less important, but it's still important because you're talking about on an electric vehicle, one of the first things that fails is the batteries. And as an owner of those trucks, the best thing you can do, aside from your routine maintenance and all that, is to do opportunity charging, because you can greatly prolong the battery life of your vehicle. In particular, when you start looking at a warranty of 7-8 years, and now you're seeing some companies pushing up into double digits with for pay extended warranties. If you can increase that natural life expectancy of your battery, you've greatly increased the life expectancy of your vehicle itself. Terminal tractors as diesels, you know, they'll operate 20-25 years. You know, there'll be a lot of work on the motor, engines, and things like that. But if you have an electric truck and you prolong the battery life by 50%, you have just really had a tremendous return on investment and total cost of ownership bump that isn't even part of your original calculation.
Jumping off from a comment that Jason just made about battery life, David or James, we want to tackle cold weather impacts. We heard earlier from Emily that you had some diesels that gelled when there was cold weather. Can you talk about cold weather impacts of running an electric truck?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we really haven't seen any issues with the cold weather. Yeah, it does reduce the overall capacity, but again, if you right size the battery capacity as well as the charger and take advantage of the opportunity charging, you really won't. We've never had a truck go down or the charge be a constraint in operations at all. And as a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say I don't think we've had a truck drop below 30%, and that's in Chicago weather. You know, Chicago cold that we've seen so far. So far very resilient. Again, yeah, the cold impacts a little bit, but if you build it for the right use case, you shouldn't really have any issues operationally.
Yeah, and we've heard stories of, you know, other companies that have had to shut down operations due to diesel units having their fuel gel up while our EV kept going in the same time frame. So that was pretty exciting. But of course, the heaters are going to be on. It's going to cause an additional draw on the truck to keep it warm with a slightly faster drain, but nothing serious as long as the drivers continue to opportunity charge. And I'll keep pushing it, just like David said. The location should play a factor in speccing the proper charging cycle to meet the site profile. I would also like to say, I do have tremendous respect for the drivers and our driver team, especially in the wintertime. So you see additional hazards, slick roads, all while working in the cold and snow. But these EVs in particular in cold weather, they have some creature comforts. So you're seeing multiple and fast heat sources to heat up the cab. You're seeing heated seats, all things to keep the driver safe, comfortable, and productive during winter, which is super nice.
Great, thank you. Try too hard to bring questions in from the Q&A. So I'm going to skip that for now. XB, your role in the project is also unique, and because you're the only researcher we have. So what role can academia play in these types of projects for us?
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. So yeah, so as a research partner of the project, we focus on the data collection, data analysis to support the partners from the technical side. So overall, that we are looking at the operating conditions of the electric trucks, so that we can analyze the cost. We can identify the challenges from the data analysis that are associated with the vehicle electrification. And then we can, at the end, we can also work with the partners to provide recommendations on how to best address those challenges. So, as a research partners, we are working very closely with the other team members to identify the type of data that we need for those analysis and the type of data that are readily available in the fleet. And then we are collecting the data and then analyze the data, so that in the end to support this demonstration grant. So yeah, but those are the research elements of this project. But if you think about it, having a university engaged in this project, the impact actually goes beyond this grant. For example, as a faculty, I work with my students to do research, to publish papers, and then to present research at the conferences. So in a sense that we are sharing our practice and also best practice, and also the lessons learned from this project with a broader audience. So that's one additional benefit. I think another benefit that we are bringing, and also university can bring to the team, is that we are educating, or we are training the next generations. So we have our students, graduate students and undergrad students actively involved in this project, so that they are not only aware that there is transportation electrification going on, but also they are actively participate and also contribute to the research grants. So that gives them really good hands-on learning experiences. So yeah, I'm gonna stop here, Kelly.
Terrific, thank you. We have some questions in the Q&A box regarding maintenance costs and battery replacement and that kind of thing. And are we tracking with this project? Are we tracking maintenance costs and those kinds of associated costs? Or are we looking more at charging and operations? This is again XB or Jason, if either one of you wants to jump in.
I don't believe we're tracking maintenance costs in general. I think it's primarily the performance of the vehicles and kind of their operating parameters, not necessarily at dollars and cents on maintenance costs. But you know, the three in here can chime in, but I don't believe they've had any maintenance other than the normal preventative maintenance that's scheduled based on hours of usage.
Yeah, we haven't replaced the battery yet, and that's operating since 2017, and they're not even close to being replaced yet. You know, again, we had done some back of the envelope math that kind of match up with some of Jason's numbers. We think it could probably go 12 years before we're looking at any type of replacement, and that's only because, you know, it won't allow you maybe to perform in that use case. But so far, no real maintenance issues. One thing that we've been trying to drill down with, not only with you know, our partners Orange EV and Compass, but as well as the utility providers, is really trying to nail down a number that we can give customers as to what they can expect in increased energy costs. So while the gas comes off, you know, the fuel use comes off for the customers as an expense, you are adding a little bit of electric. Now it's nowhere near what they would pay for fuel. But that's been a hard number to try to nail down. We've done some back of the envelope stuff like that, but really that's the only, you know, real, you know, difference upper that we've seen is obviously the increase in electricity, and even that is minimal. So. Okay,
and Laser Spot, since you guys are talking now about maintenance costs in general, can you? I think you're probably the only ones who have been running these trucks long enough to talk about that. Have you seen enough operations to know the difference between the maintenance with the terminal tractor, or the EV, I'm sorry, the electric terminal tractor versus a diesel?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any hard numbers, but in general percentages, we've seen a 80% reduction in cost between fuel and maintenance. I don't know how that's broken up, whether it's 90% of that 80 is fuel and the rest is maintenance. But in general, it's probably been around 80% reduction in those costs.
Mm-hmm. I want to say there's one thing I want to mention. Maintenance often includes replacement parts that have nothing to do with powertrain, and the types of truck that this is based on is very well has a very well established supply chain. There are some electrification projects out there in the universe that have newer kind of custom made, and I know that there are some kind of supply chain issues with new panel design or new anything design that can bring the cost of maintenance up, but it's probably not something that you guys are going to see with this particular type of vehicle make. I don't know if Jason, if you have any other further input on that, or go ahead, James.
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of powertrain, we had head-to-head comparisons at Firefly of diesel versus electric trucks. At times, a lot of the times, the diesels were down due to a diesel particulate filter or something like that with the Tier 4 system. In terms of wear items like a fifth wheel or tires, they're going to be about the same. So apples to apples comparison, if you're comparing the powertrains, EV wins all day. Jason, you probably have more to add than that.
Yeah, I would chime in on that. We've had customers who've actually operated 4 diesels and 4 electrics at the same time in the same operation, and they see anywhere between 4 to 5 times more downtime for the diesel than the electrics in that window. I will say that the tires, you get a slightly less wear on the tires because of the regen braking, as opposed to where you have more slamming on your brakes type situation where the electrics just stop quicker because of it doesn't have the motor still pushing it like you do. But it's minimal. It's not anything you would actually write home about, but it does exist. But the powertrain, as a comparison between the two, it's just candidly what it really comes down to is fluid and wear. And on a diesel, you have so much fluid you have to have in there, so many parts that are rubbing against each other that there's more wear, that just the nature of the beast, it has to have more maintenance. It is down more for random things. And then when you couple that with, and I haven't seen any studies on this and we've never actually done it, but I believe that when you start talking about opportunity charging for an electric and are only using it when the drivers aren't using the truck, when you have a diesel, you actually periodically have to fill that diesel up during working time, and you can't wait till between shifts to do it. And so I think there's even some lost productivity in with regards to fueling as well.
Okay, so since we're talking about cost, we've danced around it a little bit, but the upfront cost for an electric terminal tractor and many electric vehicles in general is a main barrier for fleets considering a switch to electric. Jason, can you give us a typical payback period? Like how many months or years does it take your customers? I know that they're all over the place, but what are you seeing? And then do you have a lease program that can further alleviate that pain point?
Right. So in general, we see the payback period for our trucks. And again, it depends on which truck you're getting because we have the extended duty versus standard duty. And then you have, essentially when you're talking about extended duty, you're talking about a $50,000 more expensive truck. And if you're using that and go up to the fast charge, you're talking about a charger that costs $60,000 instead of $6 to $8. So a lot of these paybacks are really on the smaller users who have a very large concern about the payback, and they're looking at a standard truck with a enhanced or standard charger. we see paybacks on those trucks. And again, this is all contingent upon their hours of operation, but we see that coming in at about 3.5 to 4 years. And that's without incentives. And if you get any type of incentives that lowers it, if you're in an operation, like I think Laser Spot has some operations like this where you're running these trucks like 5,000 plus hours a year. So you're essentially running them 3 shifts. Now all of a sudden your payback changes dramatically because just the 5,000 hours, you're looking at a significant diesel cost just to run your truck that long. And so in general, you're looking about between 3 and 4 years on a reasonable operation. But if it's lighter use, it can extend out. If it's heavier use, it can be quicker.
Okay, perfect.
To combat that, aside from all the work we do with, working on incentives and things like that, which candidly, they're going to start evaporating over the next few years for these types of vehicles because the technology becomes adopted enough that they will focus their incentive money on newer technologies or newer vehicles, different vehicles. So we do have a leasing program. Essentially, it's a fair market value lease, which what that means is you essentially don't have to take it on your books from a capital expenditure. It's still an expense dollars. At the end of the lease, you can either release the truck, you can purchase it at a determined price, or you can return it. And basically all of our lease include the truck, the charging equipment, and our warranty. And like I said, the new warranty is 7.5 years on batteries and then 3 years on components. All of our service that we provide for our trucks, we provide all the services ourselves in general. There are some customers that they might provide some of their own service, but in general, when we deploy trucks, we either have a service tech in that general vicinity, or we ultimately intend and ultimately do deploy a service tech in that general vicinity. Our lease terms on these, they're pretty flexible to fit the customer's duty cycle. And, we'll have minimum hours in there that need to be met or maximum hours, or we'll have a structured kind of payment plan because a lot of these we anticipate we might get the truck back. And so we look at it from that standpoint. And the lease term is usually between 3 and 7 years. So you're still looking at that payback term on your ROI if you're depending on your usage, but you're also just essentially you finance your payments. Really, that's what you've done. And if anybody's interested in it, they can just kind of email sales@orangeev.com, and if you want more information on them and get further into the woods on what the terms of those leases are.
Okay, excellent. And I wanted to ask Drew and Julie to jump in here and talk about incentives at the utility level. What Evergy has available, what you may be planning on, and just generally give us an idea of what utilities can help fleets do.
Yeah, so right now we're kind of a little bit in limbo. We have what we've proposed as far as rebates, but the proposed rebates have not been approved. But we see this working, at least from Evergy's recommendation for the rebates that we'll offer, is an approved equipment list of level 2 and level 3 charging equipment. And, it really does depend on the charging equipment that you are needing. And if it matches up to our approved list, then this is something that will be very beneficial to your business case. So stay tuned. We will have, once we do have these rebates to offer, we will stand those up pretty quickly. So definitely check out our website or keep in contact with Drew and I, and we'll be happy to share with you what rebates we will have available. And those are coming very soon.
Excellent, thank you. Does anybody else want to jump in on that conversation of return on investment or incentives you've used? And remember, this is where grants come into. This is where MEC and our services come in as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Kelly. There's actually still a lot of interest in unsubsidized trucks, full stop, just because of the benefits of saving on the fuel and maintenance. Keep in mind, the truck lasts much longer than a diesel powered truck. So once you get past that, even point of ROI, or once you even get paid off, you'll experience that for a lot longer than you would a diesel. I'll say that for one. But for two, I would say just apply for as many grants as you can. There's a lot of great groups out there. MEC has been a great partner. Companies such as Compass with James, they've helped guide us at LaserSpot to apply for as many grants as possible. They've made it, a turnkey solution, and it really makes it an easier sell for the customer. So if the economics are really a sticking point, I always encourage people to apply for as many grants. You can always, again, even if you get awarded and you can't sell it, you can always turn down the money. But I would encourage people to apply for grants while they're out there right now.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. There's a little bit of a follow-on question. I think we've already touched on it. If anybody has anything to add, please feel free, otherwise we can skip over it. But for the fleets, is there any other cost benefit that your company has seen that we haven't already talked about since deploying the trucks? I kind of think we've covered that. But feel free to just jump right in.
I'll chime in this because someone actually touched on it a while ago, but I don't think anybody would have probably seen this as of yet, but there is going to be a big cost benefit down the road to diesel emission, inhalation, particulate class action lawsuits. I'm not sure, but somebody chimed in earlier saying that they had to let a diesel mechanic go because his asthma was affected by the diesel emissions. But that's a longer term type thing. But those companies that adopt this, it has become somewhat of a trying to replace the mesothelioma and the asbestos lawsuits with the class action and mass torts. And so I think companies who adopt these technologies early on will be pleasantly surprised in about 4 or 5, 7 years when those diesel emissions torts are hitting their companies hard, and it falls outside of the scope of work comp, and you're paying out a mass lawsuit because of emissions of a piece of equipment you used.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, a lot more states, just to add to that, Jason, a lot more states are imposing some of those emissions reporting requirements, California being the first one. So we've seen a lot of companies, one, obviously inquire about EV, but the reporting that goes along that as well. So as that, those sort of constraints expand, across the Midwest and across the rest of the country, you'll have a lot more pressure to, move to EV vehicles or some sort of, aggressive idle reduction type policy. It won't happen overnight, but again, California is the first one, and it'll spread to Oregon and so on and so forth. So just wanted to add that.
Great, thank you. The last question, really, before we jump into any remaining questions on the audience Q&A, is related to power, and we've definitely touched on this in this conversation already. Is there anything that you all want to add? And what I mean by that is power is a concern of fleets that are looking to go electric. It's kind of a myth. We already touched on the fact that it's not really an issue. But I know that Orange EV has deployed a Tandem Axle, which provides some additional structural and power benefits for the fleets, and also I don't know, Jason, if you guys are ready to tease any new developments from Orange EV.
Yeah, I can give a little bit of a tease here. First of all, the Tandem Axle, it is a purely regulatory truck, in that what it is you've got weight requirements if you're actually driving on a surface street that you have to distribute the weight that's being put on that back axle. It's too heavy and it damages the street. So you have to go and put it on 2 axles. And so it distributes the weight differently. There's really not much of a change in power there because you're still using the same powertrain and it's still just connected to one of the axles. That being said, I mentioned earlier about us having a extended and a standard duty truck. What that was is we tried to right size our trucks from the get-go to people's operations. And we also didn't overpower them. And that being said, our trucks are great for all your Class 8 loads. However, there are situations where companies will pull bomb carts or they'll pull, and that happens a lot in the ports. And a bomb cart will be essentially a double trailer that's 160,000 pounds total, or 100,000 pounds on the trailer, whereas a single load would be 50-some thousand pounds. And so there's operations like that. There's also operations where you have extremely long runs where you want to go faster and pull a full load. So those type of operations weren't really in our bailiwick. They weren't in our sweet spot that we tried to go for. So what we're doing, we're in the process of developing a heavier duty truck, and this will go, basically it'll go about 25% faster. So you get up to the 32 mile per hour range. And that is just so you know, if you're in the market for trucks, 32 miles per hour is a key number in these type of trucks because it avoids a lot of crash regulations if they go over 32 miles an hour. So that's why that you won't find many terminal tractors. There are some, don't get me wrong, but that will go in excess of 32 miles an hour, and it has to do with DOT and lower speed vehicles. The next, it will go from being able to pull gross combined weight rating of 81,000 pounds or 80,000 pounds to 180,000 pounds. So it'll have more strength. In addition, we will also increase the battery capacity on those trucks. We anticipate it going about 50 kilowatt hours bigger pack. So they'd be over the 200 range.
Jason, can you quickly tell us what your battery range is now?
The pack is 100 and a 180, the newer ones. The older ones were 80 and 160. We've stopped production of those, but I think all the trucks we're talking about here are 80 or 160. I don't think anybody got a new pack as part of this DOE grant. On the truck itself, in addition to that, we're going to have reinforced frame and boom to deal with those heavier loads. We'll also have rollover protection structures and falling object protective structures, which these are all required in like port operations and those type operations. And we'll have beefed up the hydraulics in the truck as well to take into account this heavier load. And we anticipate these trucks will be available in summer of next year and be commercially available. So we'll start deploying them then. And if somebody would like to contact someone at Orange EV about talking about them, they can just email sales@orangeev.com and they can have somebody will get in touch with them. But they're really going to be trucks for heavier duty operation truck or operations that require longer runs with higher speed or oversized loads. And you'll see oversized loads happening in the refuse business because they have a tendency to just pile those trailers up full of garbage and to move them to another place, and they don't have to worry about load restrictions because they're not going on the road. That's what we're doing to address the power side of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm looking through these questions, and Emily, I don't know if you want to jump in here. It looks like we've answered most of them. Does anyone want to respond to fleet management, fleet cycle kind of management practices? You touched on, here's the question. What sort of longevity are you seeing compared to traditional Class 8 vehicles? You've answered that. And what is the implication for fleet management and fleet vehicle life cycle and management practices in general? I don't know if James, Darren, or David or Chris wants to touch on that. Or maybe
Yeah,
you don't.
I think I mentioned earlier, we had done some back of the envelope math based on where our average battery capacity ended up, and that's considering cold weather and warm weather. And honestly, kind of conservative, we think easily they'll reach, 12 years. We're hoping they'll go to 15. And again, that's just to replace the batteries. We had not had one battery replaced since we've been running them. And that's from 2017, just to give you an idea.
David, if I could ask you to add on to that, have you added battery replacement into your planning to any vehicles yet, or do you simply plan to?
Maybe in another 7 years or so, but right now it's not in our CapEx budget because we haven't needed to address it yet.
Great.
Yeah, and Laser overall has a robust program to rebuild their existing diesel vehicles, so I would think it'd be something similar, David.
Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of wondered about that because you rebuild, in order to keep a truck for 20 years, you have to rebuild it at some point. What about vehicle to grid, Jason? Is that something you guys are looking at? And XB, I don't know if you have any experience or data that would point to feasibility. Is that something that you guys are looking at, Jason?
We aren't really looking at vehicle to grid because the opportunity charging, the vehicle to grid, honestly, plays more into the when they're charged overnight and sitting there overnight or charged throughout the day. Ours are really just trying to pull in enough energy to make up for what they used right before. So not really looking at it as a stationary source. But in that vein, we are looking at coming out at some point in time with a stationary source supply that could be reverse, could be to the grid, as well as being a storage center. So it can be something that sites can use to help alleviate issues they have with peak hour charging versus off peak hour charging, where you can charge your stationary source off peak and then discharge it at peak time so you aren't paying those higher rates.
So I have a couple of really short questions from anybody, or if anybody wants to address this. Has anyone seen any motor failures? And is there any difference on the tires that come with these tractors versus tires you'd see on a diesel?
I can jump in on both those. I think we really haven't had motor failures. The motors are a brushless motor. It's completely enclosed, so you avoid a lot of your environmental problems with those motors. They're part of the preventative maintenance is replacing the filters and things like that protect that motor when they do have to have some air coming onto them just from a cooling standpoint. But we haven't had a motor failure that I can think of. And what was the other question? Was about batteries?
Tires, whether those are different.
Tires are all the same. I mean, honestly, it really depends on what your usage is, where you're using it on the tires. But I think James mentioned it earlier that, there might be a slightly less wear on the electric tires, but not enough to really write home about. And so it's all the same, and the tires are whatever you need for your particular operation. I mean, we have some places that use the low friction rolling tires because their operation allows it. We have some operations that have very heavy duty, very aggressive tread tires because they've got an environment that requires that. So it depends on your needs, but the tires are the same.
Okay. I think that does it for audience questions. And I know, Emily, we're running up against time. So I want to thank the panelists and hand it back over to Emily at this point. This is a really good discussion, and I really appreciate all of the excellent audience participation. And I think this has been a really, really good learning opportunity for me as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you all again for taking time out of your really busy schedules to share your experiences with the truck. I know we covered a ton of info today, so we will be sending out a follow-up of the recording, the slide deck, and several of the resources mentioned. So resource links to Evergy's resources, the lease program Jason mentioned, our contact info. So all of that we will send via email. But again, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. Kelly and I at MEC, we can definitely get you pointed in the right direction. So, I know we covered a lot about funding opportunities, or even if you just want to talk to one of these, one of our project fleets to get their firsthand experiences. So there's my email. And again, we will send a follow-up email with all this information, but just again, we'll let you go a few minutes early. So thank you everyone for joining today, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.